Thank you for the welcome. So, my name is Lars Bendix. I'm a professor in software engineering at Lund University in Sweden, and I teach a course on software configuration management, among other things. And I'm the theoretic academic guy today.
My name is Andreas Go, and I work in a small company called QCM. And we specialize in configuration management and PLM and PDM, those kind of things. And I've been working as a consultant in different companies with configuration management, DevOps, and those things for about 20 years. So I represent the industrial part of this presentation.
Yeah, and both Andreas and I, we are part of SBoM, the Scandinavian Network of Excellence in Software Configuration Management. So both of us are software configuration management nerds. A couple of years ago, there was a lot of buzz about this software bill of material, a lot of hype, and Andreas and I, we were very happy about that, because software bill of materials has long been a central concept of software configuration management. But when we saw that what was in the bus, we said that there's a lot more to this story. So we started to dig into it, and today we will present sort of the full story of software bill of materials for you.
Yes, so continuing the previous presentation was really good. We will give you some motivation. Why should you care about the software bill of materials? A little bit about the history of software bill of materials, and then continue into our current work. We are working on a white paper about this, just to give you a teaser of the things that we have found. We will round off in the end with some general software bill of materials considerations and some lessons learned. So, some motivation for you. Software bill of materials will be an external requirement from, for example, US or the EU, as we saw in the previous presentation.
That is probably what you already know, but Andreas and I, we knew that software bill of materials has been a very useful concept right back from 1980.
So developers are the optimal producers of software BoMs, or the information for software BoMs.
And hopefully after the presentation, you'll also see that operations and developers, they can be very heavy users of software bill of materials if they know what it is, what's about.
Yeah, and software bill of material is needed for all of your systems and environments, so you know what you have running in your environment.
And if you have control over what you have in your environment, it's also much easier to have change management and cybersecurity and things that previous presentation.
Also, if you upgrade from a known state, you can roll back to a known state if the deployment goes down the drain.
So we will give you sort of the full story of the bill of materials. We begin in 30 minutes. That's the limit what we give, but we will give you an overview of the software bill of materials. Is nothing strange. There's nothing weird about it. Because here we have two examples of materials. Here we have the name software bill of material. Hopefully this name points to a data record where SBoM has all the information that they need to have about the release. And as we see on the right side, one of the information that they have connected to the data record, let's call it a software bill of material, is the release note. Hopefully they also have a lot of other information.
So, software booms in the 2020s. In 2021, the US President signed the Executive Order 14028. And this is to strengthen US ability to respond to cybersecurity vulnerabilities in a quick and efficient way. For example, Heartbleed and SolarWind, and those kind of things. The US Department of Commerce and NTIA wrote the minimum elements for a software bill of materials. And it's a list of ingredients with focus on vulnerability scans.
Yeah. Let's go back in time, fast rewind. Back in the autumn of 1985, at the University of Pisa, and when my head was sort of exploding by listening to Italian all day, then I needed to relax, and I went to the cinema, and once I went to see the film Back to the Future. It wasn't Cinema Paradiso, I think it was called Arsenale, and they showed films in original language. And I was so fascinated about the fact that you can actually go back and see what happened. So let's go back into the past. The same year, 1986, Wayne Babbage published a book on software configuration management. And apart from having 3 coordination problems that he highlighted, configuration management and coordination, he also have an entire chapter dedicated to what we now call the bill of materials. Back then, the term software bill of materials was not coined yet. So he said many times the fastest approach to finding a bug is not analysis of the program itself, but analysis of the history of the program, how it was created. The history of the program, all its derivations. They would call it material. And actually, he says that in such a software bill of material, he's interested in what were the tools that would create this executable. What was the input, source code, and other things that options, arguments. Okay. And a lot of other stuff. And then his quote is that an ounce of derivation, a little bit of room, is worth pound analysis. So instead of analyzing 2 million lines of code to find a bug, you can have the software boom for what doesn't work today, software boom for what worked yesterday, and you just compare them. That's what is different. Then you probably have a lot less lines of code. Did you also see the film?
Yes, and I also saw the sequel. So we also need a sequel. So also back in the 80s, early 90s, some of us remember ClearCase with mixed feelings, perhaps. In that tool chain from Rational, they had ClearMake, and ClearMake automatically creates software bombs, and they are called configuration records. The reason for creating those configuration records was to be able to reuse build artifacts in a smart and secure way. Configuration records contain information about what went into the build, like source code, and also build environment, things like compiler switches, operating system and whatnot, and also the end result. So configuration records can be read and used by both machines and humans. So that's one of the key things today.
Yeah. So we already refuted one fact that the software bill of material is something that was invented by the US government 2021, something like that. It's an old concept, very useful, and Andreas and I wanted. So we took an academic approach to it. So we read a lot of literature. There's actually not a writing, at least academic writing about it, but we found some, and there were some blog books. And we also interviewed, I think it was close to 20 people that have been working or were actually working with materials. Try to dig out what are the different that we have for us. Now we've seen that in Babbage, debugging, and here makes that for optimizing building.
Yes, and we ended up with hundreds of unique use cases and variants of the use cases. So we needed to have some structures in place to work with this. So we identified 3 types of SBoM categories and also use cases within those categories. So one is the actual bill of material, the list of ingredients, so to speak, what went into this build. But also the bill of process, how did we build this? And we can use this to reuse built files or artifacts. We can use this for debugging. We can rebuild software if we need to, and also do build audits. What went into this build? Did we get the right stuff? We also identified that we need more information, like license information. Do we have commercial licenses, open source licenses, and so on? Export control. Can we export this to certain countries? Yes, we could yesterday, but now they are at war, so we can't export anymore. Other legal aspects and test-related matters, and also for information sharing.
So we don't have time to go through these case categories, but soon we'll have a white paper out. Sales. Today we're going to pick a couple of them and trying to build this concept material. You'll see it gradually grow in the right corner. So the first step is to look at what hardware for materials. One of my brothers working the industrial metal mechanics. They've been using things on, and I can have a very good conversation with him about bill of materials. He's not searching for objects by IDs, he's searching for part numbers. But basically it's the thing. We don't have part numbers for our objects or binaries, call them objects. Hope give them ID. One of the use cases instead for searching for objects, it came up that one of the employees doing analysis. So when he had to recognize delivery that he was given, that he pass on quality assurance, he had to make sure that that development from it in this delivery was actually. So he was searching for the binaries that were implemented in 19, and if they were there, happy. We can also get a patch that we need to install as operations, have already that on the system there or what. So search binary. And we need to know what is the system. One of the examples that I use for my students is this logon module. So internally in the company we like to reuse. So one team already has logon module, and we need that for other products that we have, just reuse code. And now we figure out that the problem on logon module. Now we need to find all the products and all the versions that use logon module. It seems like an easy task, and it could have been an easy task. The problem in this company is that when you have the logon module your product, you take the source code from our shared repository, you compile it, and I do the same thing. Now we have two different unique IDs of the same binary because we use it. make it even worse, Andreas, exactly. So sometimes we don't just look for the binary by unique ID. We also have to have unique IDs on source code. And we need to connect source code of the bill of binary. Bill of process, Wayne Babbitt says that process, how it and reproducibility or using binaries of base management. So I had to know to be able to build and rebuild, we need to have the source code as the object. But in some cases, that's just not sufficient. If we do SBoM development, then if we go bankrupt, you get the source code project, it's not very useful. You will have to do a lot of work before you can actually do something with it. In some cases, you have a company that has a long-term maintenance contract. Petrochemical station have a 5-year maintenance contract. Now the problem software that you delivered 30 years ago, the hardware that they have is at least 30 years old. So if you have to fix the bug, use the modern tools, probably work that. So we need to be able to turn back 30 years and have exactly the same years ago. And that should be described in material. It also means that we will have to preserve, we'll have to compiler, and maybe also a lot of other things.
Yes, so the final piece of the puzzle, at least the way we have defined it, is the bill of information. So information about the artifacts is needed for communication, maybe audits or certifications. So in this example, we talked about test-related matters. So if a program or system is used that can affect human safety, for example, in a car or in a medical device that keeps a person alive, it could be vital to save the test information. And that means all test cases, test results, test environments, for example, containers that run tests on software. And I'm currently working in the automotive industry. You can guess it's a Swedish car. And they have actually been involved in a legal dispute when one of the cars crashed. And they had to provide quite a lot of information. So you need to have quite a lot of information when authorities knocking on your door and ask for proof that it was not the car that broke, it was something else. Test information can also be used as a selling point or a quality stamp that our software handles these tests, and that makes it certified for a certain level of usage or for a military context and things like that.
Yeah, and it seems like I was talking too fast, so now I've been wound down to half speed because I can only wave with one hand, but hopefully you can hear me now. So a lot of depending on your context. Sometimes you just need to have bill of materials, the contents, a list of the contents. Sometimes you need to add these things with the process, and sometimes for the authorities you need to be able to prove that this has been tested, what were the test results, and a lot of other different information. Now, when we published this, we got a reply from Julia Vian, an old participant of the IDI, and he said that, well, then the actual use case that he described was a little longer than this, but this is the condensed version. An internal agent replaces the source code or a tool that is used for producing the build with something malicious. So it's a little bit like the scenario that Paulo sketched in the previous presentation. Now, what can we do about that? Well, It means that we must have unique IDs for everything, not just the binaries, but also for the source code and for the tools, the compilers, and the environment and everything else. And we must trust these IDs. We are configuration managers, so we will leave to the security people to create some unique IDs that we can actually trust. But we can use the software bill of materials to have sort of a build paranoia. So if you don't trust that I'm not being compromised, you just take the bill of material and you can create your own bill built from that. And then we can compare the two. And if they're not identical, then one of us have been compromised, because they should be identical. There is an organization with a website that is focusing on reproducible builds, and you can go there and read more information.
Yes, so during our work with our white paper, we found that some parts are common for all our use cases. So we want to share some considerations if you want to start to work with software BoMs, or if you're already working with it. So first you need to decide, okay, what detail of information do you need in the software BoM? Do you need to format it or wash it before you show customers or clients? Also, what kind of format, representation format, will you use? For example, NTIA in the States, they defined a format for a list of ingredients, and they did a really good job about that. The reason why we are here is that we think that it's more to a software BoM than just a list of ingredients. But they did a good job for the task that they have. Then you need to make the software BoM available. So it's readily available with the correct information. And if it's in a document format, it can be both man and machine readable and usable. A software BoM can be in a database that you can query to get the results back that you're looking for. And since it's DevOps, we want to automate as much as possible, both in creation of the software BoM, but also using it. And then we found that in some cases, the data in the software BoM can be of a static and dynamic nature. And what we mean by that is that we have software version 1.0, and it's considered secure by all tests that we have made. Further down the line, someone discovers a vulnerability in that software, and we have to make a new software with a fix for that problem. So, because the software has one status at one point, doesn't mean that that will stay like that forever.
Yeah, there were some more considerations. We also need to keep the software BoM up to date. So when I patch my Firefox, I download a new version of Firefox, and if we work with software BoMs, I will also have a software BoM for the new version of the Firefox. And now I will have two software BoMs. And when I actually install the download, then it should sort of take away the old software BoM and say that now this is the software BoM that is actually valid for the installation that you have. When I patch Windows, I don't do that anymore because my wife has been moved to Linux and I'm using a Mac. But my father is using Windows. And when I patch that, then we should keep the software bill of material in sync with what is actually on the system. I hope that Microsoft has a way of doing that. Then you all know that we can do a lot of configuration and parameterization both at build time, at install time, and also while we're running things. So when I boot up my car, I can sort of pick what are the things, the installations that I want to have. The build time parameterization is fairly much under control. If we have the pipeline and if we catch all the data in the pipeline, then we have the description as the bill of process. in our software bill of material. But what happens when we install a system and we select some modules and deselect other modules? Then if you're operating the system, you should have a software bill of material that actually mirrors just precisely what is running there. And also when it runs, we can do some more configurations. We are talking about software bill of materials also for tools and environments, and Paolo talked about infrastructure as code, and as soon as we talk as something as code, then we must have a bill of material. And if we talk about everything as code, then we must have a bill of material for everything. We looked a little bit into cloud issues. If we use tools from the cloud, can we be sure that we will have the tool also 13 years from now if we have a long maintenance contract, and we'll have to be able to turn back in time? If we're Spotify, we don't care, because we don't do maintenance. We just go forward, and we use the recent. But some companies, they have a maintenance contract and need to be able to go back and maintain old military software. So they will need to be able to have also the old version of the compiler. When we're using services in our system, cloud services, will we have bill of materials for these services? Otherwise, we're using a library that doesn't have a bill of material and that we cannot know what it is that we're actually using. And we gave a couple of thoughts also for bill of materials for microservices. And thinking about it, it was sort of almost like our head was exploding. But that could be another reason for automating these things. If you automate it, then your head will not explode. The tool will not care whether you have 200 dependencies or 2 million dependencies or artifacts in your bill of material. So the key takeaways that we want you to take home with you for today: DevOps as consumers of software bill of materials.
Yes. So it is more than a list of ingredients. So you can put requirements on the information that you need to process as consumers. And you can also, of course, use it for vulnerability scans. As we said before, we found hundreds of use cases and more than 10 categories. But we identified the 3 types down here in the corner. So when you can be consumers of a software boom, but you are also producers of software boom.
So DevOps as producers, you can't escape it. You're DevOps people. You build the stuff. You produce the software bill of material. You have the data, or most of the data that is needed in the software bill of material right at your hands while you're building. Don't throw it away. Shove it into the software bill of material, and everyone will be happy. Also, most DevOps people, they think, do it once, do it twice, automate. If you do a release once every 6 to 12 months, then you can spend 2 days, 2 weeks of manual work creating a software bill of material. If you do continuous delivery, continuous integration, you're producing 15 builds per day. We cannot wait for 2 weeks to have the bill of material. We need to automate it, and you know how to automate stuff. Then during our work, being configuration management nerds, at a certain point we said, well, doesn't this software bill of material not look like something that we know?
For example, configuration items, the things that we need to keep track of when we are working with it and release it to customers.
And configuration status accounting. So configuration status accounting is a query functionality in configuration management that allows you to get information that is useful for you. So if you don't produce software for the US government, forget about Cyclone DX and SPDX. This should be your configuration management database. And the information for the software bill of materials should be in there in your configuration management database. And then you don't extract it as a document. that will very soon get out of date. You do it as queries. For using these software bill of materials, the US government, they don't trust you. My brother is buying and using software. He doesn't trust himself. He knows that he will never, ever scan the software bill of material for vulnerabilities. He wants you, as the supplier, to guarantee to him that regularly you will scan this, and as soon as you find something, you'll notify him. So he doesn't need to get a software bill of material, but you will need to have it internally in your company. Thanks a lot. So we have a website where we're gradually putting up information, and eventually when we have the white paper written, then the white paper about software bill of materials will also be there. And it will contain more details than we had the time to do today.